all of us probably now know hallucinations. And these models, by design, are supposed to be hallucinating.
Interesting. So I was thinking, for example, we were using a chainsaw to cut the tree and the kakdi, the cucumber. So now DeepSeek is able to say, "ये तो kakdi काट रहा है, इसको chainsaw की जरूरत नहीं, इसको kitchen knife चलेगा."
I'd love to know what's going on in your mind when you come up with a question. Right? I'd like to read your
but
mind.
I would not like to share.
I know. Thankfully, you are not DeepSeek. But DeepSeek made it open.
Welcome everyone to the Piramal Finance podcast. I'm your host Raj, and I have the privilege of having Jaideep Chakravarti. We fondly call him JD. And JD is our head of AI in tech. To sort of demystify AI, talk about its origins, break it down for you in terms of what happened over the years and what to expect next year. And I'm sure a lot of you have many questions, anxieties, and of course curiosity about artificial intelligence. So, JD, we keep talking about AI has been around for many decades, right? But we also use all these terms like ML, NLP, Generative AI, Agentic AI rather loosely, and it would really help for you to help us, define this and break it down for us.
Yeah, I think that's great because I'll leave the agentic part a little beyond because that's more of an implementation. But you're right. I think it's important to basically structure these conversations in a way that basically, because I myself found it a jargon when I started with this. So it was important to put this key, what comes under what, right? And if you look at it in that perspective, so the mother of all or the father of all is the artificial intelligence, where we basically try to define it's making machines do what human does intelligently, mimicking human intelligence artificially, right? As it says. Just below that, what it comes is the machine learning, which is basically the techniques to make the first one happen, right? Machine learning, and I'll probably try to draw the path to generative AI because I think that's the hot topic right now, and that's where the path is. So one specific techniques of machine learning is the deep learning, where we're trying to make these prediction algorithms with a lot of unstructured information, where one of the techniques is basically artificial neural network, where we try to create an entity relationship of all the information that comes in. And I think we'll probably discuss maybe later, but how things like chatgpt, when I ask it a question that I bought an apple for 1,50,000 rupees, and it quickly understands that I'm not talking about apple as a fruit, but I'm talking about apple as a company. Right? This is exactly happening via this deep neural networks where we are trying to understand. And there are many techniques of deep learning, and you have supervised learning, unsupervised learning, supervised learning where you train it to behave in certain ways, unsupervised where it tries to identify the patterns with which it is trained with. Then reinforcement learning is one of the other techniques of deep learning. I think one example could be there's a robot dog video that got really viral where they tested it inside a room, and it basically perfected its way towards the obstacles. But when they put it into outside in a park, then it started falling down. But after 15 minutes, it's all up again because it tried to understand its environment, right? A good example of reinforcement learning in the context is also ChatGPT. Sometimes you will see that there's thumbs up, thumbs down of ChatGPT responses. Sometimes ChatGPT shows you two responses and asks you that which one you like, and that becomes a data. And after that level is where we start entering the foundational models or large language models, which are...
JD, sorry to interrupt you there, but before you go to foundational models, could you help the viewers to understand what is ML, what is NLU, NLP, and traditional AI, and then move to...
So essentially, when I talk about machine learning, right? So machine learning is a technique where we write algorithms to achieve the artificial intelligence solutions that we get to do, right? Mm-hmm. And then the NLU, which is natural language understanding, and NLP, which is natural language processing, is a way, how how do I say it? Let's say machines don't understand language. Machine understands numbers, right? These are the techniques where we basically have a way to take away the human language and convert it into machine understandable language, right? Where NLU kind of comes in. And then what machines does with this, how does it process to basically go ahead and do further tasks, right? One good example could be when I ask, I'm bringing the chatgpt examples all the time because this is our probably, I hope it's everyone's go-to tool.
Probably on everybody's phones.
Everybody's, it's already open. But the thing is that when I ask a question about the same thing, that what is an apple? First it gets converted into numbers, and in technical terms we call them embeddings, right? And then it is given to the machine for a better understanding of what is the intent of it, and it's basically kind of goes ahead and tries to take the solution a little bit forward. What I do with it right now, like, am I supposed to give the answer? Where is the answer? How do I search from my knowledge base? Yeah, so I think in a very nutshell, I think this is NLU and NLP is basically the primary thing of in today's AI that we speak about.
Correct.
Without naming what I mean, right?
Yeah.
But again, coming back to the lower part of it, which is the foundation models,
Yes.
and foundation models can exist in many forms. So, for example, for ChatGPT, GPT-4o, which is the recent model, is a foundation model that it was built upon. Now, what are foundation models? Is basically a large model that has been created over a large corpus of data. Some of the companies like Facebook, who makes these open source for us, basically to make sure that you don't spend that much money to train this. And let's say you want to build your own large language models, then you can borrow this foundation models and train them at the top of it. The reason being simply your cost will be much more lesser. Cost in terms of money as well as the carbon footprints. Like the more time you have your computers running, it's not good for Earth, right? So and that's where they kind of come in with these foundation models. And this is where the generative AI kind of starts entering. And when we say generative AI, it's generative AI for text, it's generative AI for voice, it's generative AI for images, right? Anything that can make it understand human language and come up with creative content. And last thing that I want to say, and I think we'll probably go a little deeper into it, all of us probably now know hallucinations that comes in, right? And these models by design are supposed to be hallucinating, right? And we are trying to control that, because whenever we want them to be creative, they have to hallucinate, right? But anyway, we figured out our way to basically have positive hallucination, what we call it.
Correct.
Sometimes it is a positive hallucination, but this is whenever we are getting into generative AI's world, we are entering into the perspective where we have creative content kind of coming in.
True, because most humans who are creative, many of them get high before they get creative. So hallucination is the high.
You have to hallucinate.
Then machines
You have
go
to
through.
imagine the unimaginable. That's a word.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you, JD.
Yeah. So I think in Piramal we have a lot of ways where we have actually proved that how to take away these hallucinations and bring to our values. So Raj, I think it will be great to know that how we have been and how we are using this AI in multiple fields like email automation or email management, AI-based email management, especially in your service or across the organization. It will be great to know how
Sure.
you're doing it.
Sure. JD, thanks for that really demystifying those jargons for us. And as you were speaking, I was wondering how at Piramal we have moved from exploring to deploying some of these things. So say for example, we call our employee assistant Arya, you know that. So, and we have large sales teams. And imagine the team leader in a sales team is pushed or nudged on WhatsApp that, hey, based on your huddle meetings yesterday, you might want to tell Sunil to check this file which is lying sanction undisbursed, right? Do you know that Rajesh is not earned enough incentives this month, right? So no more digging into dashboards and drawing deep inferences before you go into a team meeting. And if these nudges start going early morning, our supervisors are prepared for their meetings and actions for the day. So Arya is a AI powered conversational assistant which works through reams of data to provide concise capsules of advice
Yep.
to supervisors. And you were mentioning about email management, right? And that's a classic use case for traditional AI. So you spoke about learning, you spoke about natural language understanding, and this is where email texts are read through machine learning models, applying knowledge graphs. Natural language understanding helps you pick up the right intent. So, for example, if an email comes and I know that this customer needs a document, so with ML and NLU, I know that this customer needs a statement of account. Post understanding the intent, I just call the right APIs to generate that document, create a mail, and respond to the customer. This is how we use AI, ML, NLU to drive email management. So that frees up our executives to do more complex stuff. Like maybe imagine at Piramal we have started responding to more than a third of our emails like that. That leaves time for us to pick up the phone and talk to the customer because we have given a lightning response on an email.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I hope that response was fine, and here is something else we have to talk about. Right. So that builds connection. At the same time, delivers excellent responses.
Yeah. I think that's a great point because this actually shows you how we should look at AI capabilities. I take the example of a bento box kind of thing, right? So where you have the capabilities in multiple boxes, and I think as you mentioned, the intent identification.
Right.
Now, how can we take this food from multiple boxes, mix and match, and make our own food? Because intent identification, we know that we have been also using in some of the other use cases in the organization as well.
So the intent in this case is that I'm hungry and I want nutritious food.
Yes.
Right. So it picks up the right ingredients from the box.
Yeah, and it becomes the creativity. So the creativity from chef moves to the eater.
Yeah.
And now that I have these tools, how can I make this something that is suitable for me? Now that I can mix and match and make my own thing. So it's a great example that how we are actually mixing and matching and coming up with these type of tasks. Right. Fast forward, Suraj, one thing I've been seeing that we met like almost, I think it was a couple of months back probably.
Yeah.
And when the DeepSeek era kind of came in,
Yeah.
I saw it opened in your laptop, and today, if you see, it has challenged the major LLM providers like OpenAI, made them think. Right? Google is thinking, Microsoft is thinking, and this company has just disrupted things. What are your thoughts? Like, you have probably played with it more than I did.
Oh yes. No, not more than you, but yeah, I have played with it.
Yeah.
And very interesting from what I'm hearing. I think it really dropped the bomb on most LLM offerings that were there, claiming to be very cost effective, and I'm sure it is, given that it made the fact that it uses very little compute, to do what it does, raised a storm, right? And I started using it, and the interesting thing that I noticed is that it, unlike chatgpt, it was actually telling me what it understood and how it is thinking.
Yeah.
And the answers were way more comprehensive and detailed. Like so for stuff like analyze the union budget of this year, I loved the answers and then the impact that the budget can make to the economy as an answer from DeepSeek as compared to other LLMs. So I was totally astonished, given the sort of response it was giving. And of course, the cost thing is totally true. So, as an expert, tell me what is the secret sauce behind DeepSeek and how did they do it?
Yeah, but before that, I think that's a great point that you get to see the thinking.
Ah.
Right? As a human being, I'd love to know what's going on in your mind when you come up with a question. Right? I'd like to read your
but
mind.
I would not like to share.
I know. Thankfully, you are not DeepSeek. But DeepSeek made it open. Right? And for a human who is actually looking at it, I know that if it is hallucinating in between, if it is going in the wrong direction, I can quickly stop it.
Correct.
And making this available, it's a great deal.
Yeah.
The question I think what you were asking is, how can a small company give the similar response in the same cost that OpenAI or some other big guns are trying to make it happen? So I think a large part of it lies with the internal architecture, right? What I mean is, if I take the example of GPT-4o, right? I'm not going to the other models, which is kind of a reasoning model that they have, but let's say GPT-4o. When we took the data and when we create a artificial neural network at the end, right? The entity, it's nothing but entity relationship, right? Apple is a fruit, pineapple is a fruit, and all this thing does is create that entity relationship for a model to answer your question. To give an example, things like when I ask a question, again, I bought an apple for 1.5 lakhs rupees. This is the neural network where you have Apple related stuff started blipping, and soon it realized that this person is asking about Apple the company and not Apple the fruit, because there is also an information about 1.5 lakhs, and usually apples don't cost that much, right? So this traverse of like this analytical thinking or digital analytical thinking, what you want to call it, for a model like GPT-4o is huge, right? Because the artificial neural network is huge. So when I ask a question, it has to traverse a lot of artificial net, if I can put that way. So if I have to make it faster, I have to provide more infrastructure support to it, the GPUs to it, to basically process all this thing, right?
Yeah.
And if I have to provide this, I have to spend more. If I have to spend more, then I have to charge you more.
Yes.
if I'm a business. On the other hand, what DeepSeek's architecture is very interesting. So what they do is they say, I'm not going to make ek bada sa neural net. So what they do is they divide it into a set of experts. Like, this is a financial expert, this is a physics expert, this is a chemistry expert, this is a coding expert, right? And there's a technique called chain of thought prompting, which is basically makes our models think step by step. They've inbuilt it inside the model, which means that now when you ask a question, this orchestrator decide which expert is suitable for giving you the answer better, right? So it will say, okay, this net and this net is going to give the answer. So for GPUs, it kind of has a huge impact on how much it's needed to basically infer that answer. And that is one of the primary things we call it. There's a name for it. This is called mixture of expert architecture for building LLM models. And it was, I think, popularized by Mixtral. So for people, I think it'll be interesting if you go to Google and just type Mixtral and see the suggestions. You will see that the model names of Mixtral are 8 into 7B, not 56 billion. They say 8 into 7B, which means I have 8 7B experts instead of 156 billion model.
Oh yeah.
Right? And DeepSeek has this architecture inside, which basically helps in reducing the cost.
Interesting. So I was thinking, for example, we were using a chainsaw to cut the tree and the kakadi, the cucumber. So now DeepSeek is able to say, "अरे ये तो ककड़ी काट रहा है, इसको chainsaw की जरूरत नहीं, इसको kitchen knife चलेगा." So you're not using that huge compute and power to answer a different kind of question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is what made it more economical and
one of the reasons for that. I think that's okay. I think people realize things later. Great scientists like Newton has created 2 doors for the bigger cat and the smaller cat. And when he realized later that, okay, I can have 1 door for both the cats. Right? So that's okay.
Oh, really? That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's a good.
All right, JD. So 2024 was sort of a path-breaking year in many ways. You must have yourself witnessed and sort of moved from exploration to deployment on many AI use cases. So how might you think that happened? How did that happen last year? Could you take us through an example also?
Yeah, right. 2024 is where organizations basically believe that like something like a generative AI do much more than writing a poem for me.
Correct.
Which is basically my path to value, what's kind of happened. And I think majorly there are a couple of things in my opinion that people started realizing that POC to production is a huge path. It's a huge leap, right? I can create a POC in 4 days, but to make this in production, there are a lot of challenges. And I'll probably give an example around that in some time. But the other thing is also from the perspective of data security, data privacy, etc. kind of comes in, which is absolutely essential when you basically go live with your IP data when you're trusting an AI to basically make sense out of it. But I'll give you an example which will probably tell you how the path was made. So we created an HR bot. So it's a very straight cut example. Ask from the group that, hey, we have like millions and millions of HR policies. Can I have a chat bot where I can ask my question in natural language? Because even the HRs were finding it difficult to find where is the answer for this, right? And we created the POC in 5 days actually, and there are a set of questions that the stakeholders tried it, like semi-nikalraigini, and it was doing that absolutely fine, right? But when we took it to the production, there was a major failure because we realized that there is a world beyond PDF policies where there is a HR database as well, where they actually maintain. There is so database is a structured database, right? PDF is unstructured. There are JSON, for the technical people out here who would know, JSON is nothing but a semi-structured, right? So all these we did not consider. So as a result of which, when we actually asked the same question, we just deployed this, right? Asked the same question that I still remember the question. I think it was like, I bought a Reebok shoe. Can I reimburse?
Yeah.
The database says yes, you can. The policies were updated. It says no, and the bot got confused.
Right.
Right? How do I handle this type of things, right? And this is where we missed that in production, things will be much more. The scale will be higher. There will be much more things. So we had to put an orchestrator on this, right? So the idea is that 85% of the companies today are stuck at POC, right? Only 15% gets to see the value out of it because they have moved beyond POC, where they have started bringing into the actual scenario, actual life cycle, right? So that's a major leap in my opinion that the organization needs to take. And to be fair, in my knowledge, a lot of companies still figuring it out.
Yeah.
How to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. You are right. So I was also wondering, and as you were speaking, JD, there are so many choices to make, right? When you are thinking, like as you were speaking, I was thinking there are so many decisions that that one has to take, and our viewers who are in tech or business, they might be thinking, भाई बहुत सारी चीजें हैं. There is which LLM to use, what compute to use, whether to self-host it or whether to rent it. So if you allow me for an analogy, right? So let's say you decide to run a app to supply meals, right? Now you got to choose कि भाई कौन सा meal supply करना है. Should it be biryani or should it be burgers? So decision like, okay, I am going to this is a use case for video content, right? Now which is the best LLM for video content? Maybe not ChatGPT, but probably Gemini, right? Now if you're going to do this at scale, now second question is, बिरयानी मैं खुद बनाऊं क्लाउड किचन में या मैं इसको आउटसोर्स करूं? मतलब मैं अभी ये LLM डाउनलोड करूं, सेल्फ होस्ट करूं कि मैं SaaS पे मंगाऊं, ये दूसरा डिसीजन हो सकता है.
Exactly.
अभी तीसरा डिसीजन इज कंट्रोल, राइट? क्वालिटी. आई नीड टू एंश्योर कि बिरयानी खाने के बाद पेट खराब ना हो जाए. मतलब मैं ये बनाने के बाद it should seamlessly integrate in my, like in that example, in the digestive tract, but in this case in the workflow of the current organization. Ingest it well and without any security threats. Ensure that data is secure, right? And also ensure that it is optimized. You should be able to supply that biryani at the same price consistently for a reasonable period of time, right? So you need to also be worried about. So the decision is, you want a long-term cost effectiveness, probably self-hosted, right? If you're looking at shorter end use cases, then probably call it on SaaS, right? Depending on your security needs, probably a self-hosted LLM is better. So all of these decisions, it's not that one LLM solves all the problems or hosting solves all the problems. You got to choose between the plethora of option and make your own nice biryani or own nice pizza, depending on the use case. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's such a great example. For example, अगर I can choose to have घर का खाना और बाहर का खाना, right?
Right.
घर का खाना means I have control over it. I know कि क्या जा रहा है उस पे,
Correct.
Bahar ka khana, I'm trusting someone else to basically do this. That's a great example.
Right.
The other thing that you mentioned about the cost efficiency, right? Cost efficiency, जैसे it also depends on the use case, and these models are more of a reasoning capabilities,
Right.
right? If I know my use case, भाई उसमें model को सोचने की जरूरत नहीं है. They don't have to think.
Right.
I can probably go for a open source model which I can host and I have a long term efficiency. But I cannot host something as big as O3 Mini or DeepSeek का जो बड़ा वाला version है, the bigger one, the 670 billion.
Right. Right.
There's no point of hosting this out here.
Correct.
But I know that in my workflow,
Correct.
there are places where I can take a decision. इस workflow के इस step में I will use an open source LLM.
Correct.
इस step में I'll use something like a reasoning model.
Right.
This step may I'll probably again use something like a mid model which I can borrow from some other private browser. So that's a great example.
Absolutely. So to summarize, JD, आप ये बोल रहे हैं कि once you identify the use case and then put it in the rubric of performance by that LLM, cost, and security.
And security.
Right. These are three things to look at for our viewers.
Yes, and then probably encapsulating all these things and observability for all of these.
Absolutely.
How do I see? How do I make sure?
Yeah.
Because as I was saying, bot banana is like pretty easy with everything that I do.
Yeah.
Which means that every organization has this risk of creating millions and millions of bot. I need a place where I can see which is being used, which is not being used, which one I should hibernate, which one I should get rid of. And observability is one of the primary things that also I'll just add to that list what you said.
Yeah. So. You're like Jensen Huang said, you just spoke about the fact that we need an HR head for all these agents and bots, right? To decide whom to promote and whom to put on PIP.
I think. Yes.
Right. Thank you, JD, for that one.
Thank you also for the.
So JD, now let's move on to cut back to 2024, right? Just a few months ago. This is a year when you would agree a lot of AI use cases moved from this exploration stage to deployment, right? This was a year when we were not only just talking about AI being used to cut ad films or to create content for text messages, but you really started them seeing jaw drop, right? So tell us how did that happen? Tell us a little bit about your experience of 2024.
Okay. I think if it is okay, and this is a great question, but if it is okay, let me just going to 2022 maybe, the end of 2022.
Yes, of course.
Right, and how things shaped.
That's when the penny dropped, yeah.
Yes, right. Because we all know that ChatGPT made it popularize this thing, but I've been part of OpenAI since 2017, and I've seen literally the stupidest model today shaping up to like O3 Mini that we probably see, or the GPT 4.5 that came up. So one of the primary things when we see something really cool, and you probably remembered this from the blockchain era when the blockchain came as a technology as well, people directly started thinking, how do I bring it to my business to see outcome? Unfortunately, or fortunately, in the case of ChatGPT or generative AI, it's so cool that people started playing with it a bit, which basically in a way sharpened their how do I use it and all. And in 2022 November when it came, for 2-3 months people started playing with it, and then suddenly the organization said that, hey, maybe it can do much more than writing a poem for me. Like it writes great poem, but maybe how can I use it for my value, right? And this is where I think organizations basically shifted to bring into their organization, where they figured out that, okay, how do I make sure that when I have OpenAI in my organization, obviously there are multiple ways you should consume OpenAI in an organization. You have partners like Azure's, or when I say generative AI, there are Google, GCP, AWS. They all have their own platforms out there where you should bring into stuff. But one of the things that I have seen, that there is quite a bit of path from my idea in generative AI to start seeing in production where I'm actually gaining value, right? And it started with in organizations when I started talking to people. Within like 7 days, I ended up with like almost 300 use cases, right? And when I filtered down to basically actual generative AI use cases, there are 4 or 5. So the first learning curve, in my opinion, the organization kind of sees is what is actually a generative AI use case. To give an example, I have one of the organizations saying that, hey, can generative AI look at my sales till July and tell me what's my sales going to be in December? Unfortunately, that's not a generative AI use case.
Yeah.
Right? But can a generative AI solution look at my sales till July and tell me what went wrong or what went right? What are the insights? That's where it can get creative and basically start creating things, right? So the first step is try to understand what idea is going to be a value for me. The second thing where I have seen, there's quite a path, but one of the things that I've seen is there's a POC, and one of my previous colleagues have this term called death by POC, right? Or in otherwise, which is another analogy of is this analysis paralysis, which we all know. But death by POC is a stage where we are so confident about the POC, where we say that this is going to give me 15% of efficiency. This is going to reduce my work by 40%. This is going to reduce my work by 60%, and sometimes the claim goes up to 90%, right? But unless you do this on real data, real scenarios, these are all fictitious numbers, right? And this is where I think it is important to maybe shifting the mind shift to something like a POC 2.0, where even my idea that I'm going to validate happens on my actual data. And since then, you'll, like, the moment you think like that, you'll figure out, okay, how do I make sure that when I do my POC, the data, because which is my IP, doesn't go anywhere? How do I take care of this, right? And then you figured, okay, maybe I need an enterprise version to basically start with. But what you are left with is a much better POC, where you have the solution with your end users, where they can see, yes, this actually works, or this doesn't work, or and you have a quick way to like take things away. So if I just summarize, I'm not going to the step by step on this, but there's a significant shift between a POC to production, because you have to monitor things up. You have to have proper observability, right? And you know, things like chatgpt, when you just have a text box and you can type anything, who is typing what, and how these models which are supposed to be creative is responding. You need to see those things up, right? And this is absolutely important, in my opinion, when you like paint the path of a generative AI application from idea to something that gives you value, right? So,
Absolutely.
So monitoring, data production, security, right? I'm part of red team of OpenAI, right? The models comes with guardrails, and sometimes it's pretty easy to break because these are plain English. Right?
Wow.
It's plain English to break that.
Correct.
When you are creating traditional softwares, your attack surface is very small.
So what you're saying is a whole lot of these things got in place in 2024.
Yeah, because
and that's the reason people had the luxury of starting to deploy.
Yes, right. I can create something like an HR policy bot. In today's world, we can probably create in half a day. But to take this to production with all scalability, observability, monitoring in mind, that's quite a challenge, right?
Absolutely.
And this is something what we call LLM ops.
Yeah. That's the domain of LLM ops.
Yes. You have been playing around with LLM.
Not really playing around. But as you were speaking, JD, I was thinking about an analogy. So समझ लो कि I am a wedding planner, right? और मुझे बोला गया है कि भाई we have to get the best thali possible for this dinner. Now, the analogy is as follows: I need to get a thali which is optimized, cost efficient. And this particular wedding host wants it to be nutritious,
yeah.
right? And so we got to figure कि भाई ये न्यूट्रिशियस है तो मे बी प्रॉब्ली आई टेक among the options of various thalis I go for a South Indian thali. अभी South Indian thali has I taste it myself. So first I taste it, I find it good. So can he provide it at scale?
Yes.
मतलब ये 500 थालियां मिलेंगी और
Yes.
यही कंसिस्टेंसी में मिलेंगी, राइट? So to give you a similar analogy in LLM ops, so for example, I want something that can scale in code generation or say let us say creating videos, right? So then should I choose between ChatGPT or Gemini? So probably your answer would be Gemini is a better tool
Yeah.
for video generation as compared to ChatGPT. I have got that now.
Yes.
So now, what compute would I need? Should I buy compute or should I just
Get the compute.
get the compute on rent,
Yes.
right? Third, who looks at the security updates, the optimization, and finally, ये पेट में जाके गड़बड़ तो नहीं करेगा? I need to ensure that the thali comes from a place which will not harm your health, which means it has to integrate with my workflows without causing too much disruption, right? And thanks to these, we are hearing these new terms, and the reason we were wanting to speak about LLM ops is every year, maybe every quarter, we hear new kinds of jobs. Right? We were hearing about prompt engineering last year. Now we are hearing about LLM ops this year. But much like DevOps, now there are entities, there are individuals like you who are providing this wholesome solution, right? Which LLM to choose, what compute to choose, how to integrate into our workflows, how to optimize them, how to ensure that there are no security breaches before the use case gets delivered. So like you rightly said, I think this is an age and time when something like LLM ops become very critical for organizations.
Yeah, and I think great analogy. Like पेट खराब हो गया तो what happens?
Correct.
By the way, LLM ops also should also consider the fact that अगर हो गया पेट खराब, then what is my fallback?
Yes.
That also kind of comes as a part of LLM ops.
Correct.
And totally agree with you because LLM ops, we have been seeing ML ops, right? And it should also, LLM ops when it comes, it also basically helps us to understand how quickly we can shift to the right technique.
Yeah.
So the technical viewers here probably, retrieval augmented generation is one of the techniques, right? That like
RAG.
99, RAG is 99% of the use cases that organizations do is on RAG, right? But trust me, I'm not exaggerating, but every 7 days there's a new technique that comes up. Right? So when I'm building my architecture, how modular I'm keeping, that if I know that this specific technique of RAG is good enough, how quickly I can put it into my stuff without disrupting stuff. Yeah. Sometimes it also
how can I ingest?
So like ML ops was more like an automation.
LLM ops
is a combination.
Yeah, it's like customizing to
governance.
Yeah,
governance. Sometimes it's automation. Sometimes it's also you have people who need to sign something on something that I have to kind of take care of this.
Thanks for enriching.
By the way, sorry to interrupt, but there's one more thing because we spoke about the pain of idea to production. Right?
Yes.
Using generative AI to create images from my text, solve problem. Right? Using a creation of video from my images, solve problem. But creating an ad which I can go publicly, if you've not seen Niyat, by the way, you should see that Niyat thing.
Yeah.
Is the real deal. And that, beyond this capability, took a lot of kudos to the team who actually made this.
Yes, JD is talking about the Piramal Finance ad for Holi, and we are proud to say that is an AI generated ad. And what a wonderful work by our tech and marketing teams. Yes.
Brilliant work.
So moving on, JD, to our next segment of the podcast. As AI is getting more powerful, for want of a better word, there are ethical concerns as well, right? Around data, misinformation, biases. So how do we ensure that AI remains responsible and unbiased? Like they say, with great power comes, you know what?
Yeah, boy, that's a soft corner that I've hit. I remember, I think I was in London 2-3 years back. We were having a conversation with one of the researchers from one of the largest companies that we see here. And I think I made this point. There are three things two things that doesn't let me sleep at night. One is that AI is making my decisions, and that decision includes how much discount I should get in a airfare. Am I eligible for a buy one get one?
Yeah, or what you will watch next on YouTube or Netflix.
Yeah, it's deciding what should, and creepy part, it works.
Yeah.
There's also a creepy part. But the thing is that sometimes the decision can be life changing for people. Things like, should I get? I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm pretty sure there are some cases where it decides whether someone gets a promotion or not as well.
Yeah, right? Or if the candidate gets selected for an interview, or for the job.
Or for the job, right? So that's number one. That doesn't let me sleep. The other thing is that people believing that because AI making this decision, it has to be right.
I don't know if viewers know that JD, by the way, doesn't sleep much. Oh, okay. Anyway.
Not prescribed. But but So the second point is even more dangerous, that people think that, okay, no, AI is making my decision. It has to be right. How can it be biased? And this is far from true. And most of the time, at least today's world, 2025, we're sitting almost towards the April of 2025. I think AI is more of a socio-technical problem rather than a technical problem, because we have many things that are already available. And it is absolutely essential to basically organizations, including us, which when we implement certain things like that, it is not biased. It is not ethically giving promotions to male over female because it is trained with the data, which has made it to make some certain decisions like this way, right? So data cleaning is absolutely essential. But there's a term called explainability, which is absolutely important when you're going live with any use cases, where it is your moral duty to let the people know if the AI is coming up with a decision, how it is making that, right? And certain cases, some regions governance rule doesn't let you deploy if you're not doing that, right? And the explainability has a technical cousin to it, which is interpretability, which is the technical part. Interpretability of AI. So I'll tell you the difference. The explainability is like a black box. If I ask a question, if a response comes out, I should say that what is actually happening, how it is taking a decision. To give you an example, let's say if a system says that I'm not eligible for a loan, explainability will say that, okay, we found that you don't meet these criterias, right, in some places of yours, and this is why we are not providing you a loan, or you meet these criteria and that's why I'm providing you these loans, or if there's an AI making decision. Interpretability is more like a white box, and it's more for technical people like MLs or data scientists, ML engineers or data scientists, to basically actually know how architecturally it is happening. Was the data clean with which it is trained? And most of the models, especially open source models or even sometimes Anthropic type models, you'll also see when they release a model, they also release something called a model card, where they are bound to explain that when I made this model, where I got the data, how did I massage the data or clean the data before I started training? Because one of the things that OpenAI's Sam Altman kept on saying that I'm not sure the word is Sam Altman, but it's not my statement. Just to be clear, that things like GPT-4o is trained with entire thing that is there in the internet.
Right.
And all the things that we see in the internet, are they always true? Maybe not. Right. So it is important to basically call it out. That how do I clean my data to basically make sure that this is available?
I think ChatGPT has now started quoting sources of the information and the sites they are crawling before they give the information.
Yes, absolutely. So for example, in ChatGPT now, if you use things like web search to get real data, it will tell you. But as a user, you have an option to turn that off as well.
Oh yeah.
And it is important to understand that it is actually explaining to you how it is coming about through the model card or something like
being more transparent.
Being more transparent. Yeah. But this is something that, especially in the world of generative AI, it is also becoming very important, because these models, generative AI models, has a very convincing way to make you believe something that is not true. it can convince you, right? So it's hard to catch, and this is where I think while we build this model, is absolutely important to basically have this things more transparent to the user to which this is actually going. So Raj, I think while we discuss all this thing, one of the things in April 2025
Yeah.
versus April 2024, that AI is going to take my job away.
Yeah.
That's a fear.
Right.
What are your thoughts on this? Like, do you really feel, I know that you are associated with AI, if not more as much as I am from the other outside world as well. What are your vibe? What are you getting vibe from outside?
I'll be honest, JD, the vibes are mixed, right? And you spoke about fear, right? Fear comes from not knowing, right? But it was okay. I would put it like this: it was okay to not know how electricity works, how it passes through those lines and lights up that little tube which gives brightness to the room, right? It was okay not knowing it. But if you're not going to know how AI works, then it's going to get ahead of you, right? And therefore, it's important. Now, it is making a lot of stuff simpler, easier, faster, and way more accurate as compared to what humans do. For example, we spoke about the response to lightning responses to text messages or emails, right? Intent generation with voice bots. You don't need to put millions of or maybe thousands of seeds to generate intent for a product, right? Bots could do that. Or you don't need to put humans to read documents anymore. I mean, a great OCR could do that. You don't need too many quality analysts because ASR is so accurate.
Yes.
NLP is so wonderfully bang on that I don't need, like I heard one of the large brokerages in India, which has completely zeroized the team for quality analysts. So where does this come from? Because I don't know what's happening. And therefore, I'm very glad, I'm fortunate to be at Piramal, which encourages employees to build your own tech. And JD, you have been one of the evangelists for build your own tech, along with our MD Jairam, who has pushed us in various forums to. And I love the fact that he's empowering employees to know more, right? For example, I have downloaded the Visual Studio Code.
Yeah,
you
that's
saw
amazing.
that, and
That's
and,
amazing.
and I'm writing code on React.js myself,
Yeah.
and it is such a fun journey.
That's amazing.
Yeah, to know how models work, and I'm trying to build something along with you. So the idea is to stay ahead, get to know what's happening. Don't just consume AI, but build yourself, and you'll see the fear goes away, and you'll start feeling on top of things, because there are very many job opportunities that'll get created, and you don't really need to know code. I mean, what I am doing today is natural language. So long
absolutely.
as so it doesn't really need anything else but curiosity and a little effort. And I promise you that there are too many complex problems for the world to solve, for smart people to feel redundant. I think that we are far away from that.
Yeah. Well, I think great. You brought it up, the VS Code, and I think this is, in Piramal, it feels like the future, right? You have the head of CX who has VS Code, and what he didn't tell you, and I can tell you that because I saw it, it's a full stack application that he's building, where you have React.js as front end and Node.js at the back end, and there are a few other things which I'm not allowed to say. I'm just saying, but it's a full stack application that Raj is building, and I totally agree with you. It's and one analogy that comes to my mind around 2007, 2008. So the developers community was separate, and operations community was separate. They were not talking to each other, right? And there were a lot of confusion. There were a lot of pain points and a lot of delays that were happening. It probably worked better in a waterfall way of software development. But we merged them to create DevOps. And DevOps became a new opportunity, right? And now we're talking business, who were dependent on tech, or the business and tech were two separate entities, where business can explain what is required in the best
Yeah.
possible way,
Yeah.
and the development can build the best possible way, merge them to BizTech or something. I don't know what we'll call it,
Correct.
but that's another opportunity, right? It's
Correct.
another
Absolutely.
community that comes.
Absolutely. I mean, at the risk of sounding repetitive from what you just said, JD, the companies and employees who will not just consume but create tech will be able to adapt to the AI age.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all of us have this common language. I still don't know who said it first. So I'm not going to quote anyone because everyone. It's not that AI is going to take your job.
Yeah.
It's the two similar capable people,
Yeah.
one using AI and one not using AI. The gap is going to be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So, BYOT, and that's what Jairam meant. Jairam, he didn't mean bring your own tequila, he meant build your own tech, and we are loving doing it here
Awesome.
with JD. So, JD, we spoke about 2024, 2025, but let's do a little bit of crystal ball gazing, as they say. So, we are seeing another buzzword now is Agentic AI. AI that can work autonomously without instructions. So could you just help us understand what agentic AI is? How is it different from traditional AI?
Yeah, I think great question, and like that you said autonomous.
And basically, I hear it can reason, it can plan, and it sounds like very human-like.
Yeah, and most of the time people mistake it as automation,
Right. Okay.
which is not. But yeah, I think every one of us know right now. If you go to internet, 2025 is the year of agents. Agents are going to take over, and the fear of losing jobs just goes up. But again, I think in my opinion, I tried dissecting this problem. And one fine Sunday, I just wrote an article in my LinkedIn where I was talking about what does it mean actually that agents are going to be the future. And in my opinion, as you rightly said, these agents can reason and act, and that's the fundamental principle. So I would say that if someone wants to know about agents and they are Googling or in today's world perplexing, they should actually use the word react, which is reason and act, and probably they'll get much more information, especially from something like a perplexity than Google search. In this case, about to know what needs to happen. But they can reason and act. But the problem here is that just like in the beginning of generative AI, as I was explaining, that people need to know what use case will bring me value for generative AI use case. It is important to also understand what I will solve with agents. Because this reason and act makes agents a slower thinker, right? Whereas something like a RAG-based assistant bots that we've been building with large language models, they are fast thinkers. So it depends exactly in my the use case that I am going to do, right? So for example, if the path to response is known to me, it should not be an agentic solution in my opinion.
Okay.
Right? What I mean is, let's say, I don't know, maybe something like I provide some information about, I create a chatbot where I say that create a travel plan for me for Goa, and I know that to travel this, it has to first ask me 3 questions: that what is your budget, what do you like to do, and then it should go to, let's say, Yahoo Finance, some of the travel sites, these travel site, get information, then go to Yahoo Weather to figure out what is the weather, and then give me the response. I know this.
I know the paths.
Right? And I can code it better. I don't need an agent because my LLM is coming towards the end of it. So the reason an act comes when I don't know the path to solution. One example.
So you're saying agentic AI applications come in where, as a human, I don't know the path,
but I need the answer.
but I need the answer.
One example. Sorry.
I thought you last time we were talking, JD, you gave me this example of you wanting to travel from Mumbai to Bangalore, and you might know all the answers, but there are many steps to take, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
weather and what what did you say that day? The sunscreen.
Yeah, so
To
that's
buy.
good. You
Yeah.
reminded me of this
Yeah,
analogy,
yeah,
right?
correct.
So think about that analogy that I had. So the use case that I had, where I know the path.
Yes, yes.
Now imagine there is a use case where I ask a question to the bot that how many like 50 ml lotion, sunscreen lotion I need to take with me
To Bangalore.
to Bangalore or wherever, Goa maybe. I don't know how LLMs are going to think about it or plan about it,
Yeah,
right? And like DeepSeek, who are transparent about their thinking, you might see that it is thinking the fact that, hey, maybe first I'll go and figure out how much sunscreen lotion is good for a human body. Then it will probably figure out, okay, which are those sunscreen lotions where these quantities are lesser.
Yeah.
Then it will probably think that now I probably want to understand what is the current weather of Goa. Probably now I need a calculation tool to do the math and give a answer to the user who is asking me this question. I don't know how it's going to make its path. That is, in my opinion, is a agentic use case. But actually, I should not say use case because it's more of a workflow, right? Because if you, as I was saying, they are slow thinkers. And recently, I think I was taking a workshop, and suddenly this idea came to my mind. You were there, part of it.
Yeah.
If you go to DeepSeek, which is more of an agentic thinker, and ask it hi, people can try this out. Before it gives you the answer, it will at least think for 8 seconds. Then why the user is asking me this question? Maybe the user just it's a casual hi or something like this, right?
Correct.
So whenever reasoning model comes,
Mom told me not to talk to strangers.
Yeah.
Even that showed up.
that also showed up, right? 1+1. If you ask DeepSeek, try this out. Go to DeepSeek and ask what is 1+1.
Yeah.
It will at least think for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
But if I go to ChatGPT and use something like a GPT-4o, I ask 1+1, it gives me 2. Because this is not the question that I should be asking DeepSeek. I want to ask it more complex questions.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to overthink. It's a human tendency, right? Let's say I know everything about your life, right? I would think 100 times before you're asking anything about you, right? Because I know you, right? Versus I don't know you. So sometimes over information is also a dangerous thing to basically make you look. But
Very true.
the point that I wanted to make, agent is going to the future, but it is also important to understand what workflows I'll be using agents for, right? And the other thing, the RAG, retrieval augmented generation, is going to stay along with it because this is the other path where we know the path to the solution of this, right? So, so which again, you brought the perspective of
Agentic AI.
yeah, agentic AI, and you mentioned reason and act. It can think, it can plan, which probably brings the perspective of artificial general intelligence, AGI. And the first book was Singularity is Near, which was 4 years back. The same author wrote something last year, which is Singularity is Nearer, because he predicted 2030.
Okay.
Now this person is saying is probably nearer. What's your take?
Well, I want to quote another book. I read this book called Supremacy. I don't know if you read that too. I'm sure you have. Though I'm certainly not qualified to answer this question, but as a lay person, I'm just putting the simple mathematical analogy here, right? So bigger compute, bigger models, and bigger general intelligence, right? I mean, as this equation grows in some multiple order of magnitude, it is not a question of whether or not. The question is by when, like you said, right? And it is certainly happening. And it reminds me of this analogy. And when I was watching this superhero franchise movie, where the lead tells Jarvis, "Hey, I'm already quite in a very bad shape. So you figure how to fly this aircraft, right?" And Jarvis reads the manual, asks some questions, learns, and then goes back to its past experience of flying other aircrafts and flies it. It sounds straight out of a comic book, but seems like that it's not too far when there will be self-learning bots, right? The question is the amount of power it will need. I mean, today a human brain doesn't consume more than 500 kilocalories a day, whereas we are also talking about building nuclear
Building
plants
nuclear
to
plants.
power compute. So there is a distance to cover clearly from whatever I've been hearing and learning in terms of how to make this more optimal in terms of the compute power. And early wins on DeepSeek seem to suggest that you could do more with less power. There is also this example I heard, and I want to put these traces of AGI. Like AGI shows up in these little traces in some of the use cases that are happening as we speak. So, for example, this voice bot who calls customers to remind them of a payment. Right, your EMI is due on a certain date, or to customers who say that who haven't paid on the date. So this bot told the customer that, hey, your payment was due last week, you haven't paid. By when are you going to pay? And the customer says that I don't have enough money to pay. Said, sorry, by when will you have money in your account to pay? The customer says that I don't want to pay. The bot was not trained to say this, but it said that, hey, if you do not pay, we will have to proceed legally against you. So going back to what you said earlier, right? We really don't know how these deep neural networks or these models are really thinking behind the scenes, and AGI is like sprouting out in various ways, and we got to brace up. Is all I can say.
Yeah, you're right. I think this DeepSeek thing, sometimes it becomes creepy to see how it is thinking.
Yeah.
And this 1+1 is like, wait. It was about to give the answer, then it said that, wait.
Yeah.
Maybe why the user is asking me this simple question.
Correct.
It's thinking like that. Another encounter to your point, which is my live encounter, it was so funny because I was coding and I called a lot of people, come and see what these agents are doing. So basically, there are 3 agents that I was building for some stock price analysis, right? So I had the boss agent, and there's one more agent who was supposed to do the research, and then one agent who is supposed to create the visuals of it, right? And when you basically code it out I was using Crew AI, which is one of the great open source frameworks. If you want to do this, they actually want you to provide necessary tools to the agents as well. And for a change, I was coding and AI was not coding. So I made mistakes. Right? So what I did was I gave the researcher agent a tool which I gave to the visual creation agent, like for example, who can create charts and all instead of giving browsing capabilities. So when the program started, the boss agent says that, hey, research agent, can you go ahead and basically research about the stock, right? And it responded saying that there must be a mistake, because although I'm supposed to do this, but I am not equipped with tool. Instead, I'm equipped with tool with something to create visualizations. So I suggest that you go to some other apt agent. The boss agent had only one agent in its disposal, which is the visual creator agent. So it went to the visual creator. Hey, can you create it? Then the visual agent responded that, sorry, I'm not. That's not my job. And
really?
And this was, I actually have the screenshot, and I show it in a lot of my talks. That this is crazy.
Astonishing, really.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
There's a console output. I have kept a screenshot of it. But yeah,
Well,
this is amazing.
yes.
As you said, we should brace it up.
We have to brace up. So, always lovely talking to you, JD.
Likewise.
I always go away smarter after meeting you. And this was
Again,
no different.
likewise. Again, likewise.
So, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And that's all from the Piramal Finance podcast. Thank you so much.